Wow, well, today this video has come about probably because of Cookie. She put a comment in the channel to say, would I do something else on the Rife machine, and it set me off finding a video that I did about the Rife machine quite a long time ago, and back then I didn't always label all my videos, and I've just got thousands of videos. I have to somehow go through them at some point. A lot of them just say recording or something, but they might have been on the original Sun and Moon, and I can't remember. Anyway, I tried to find it, couldn't find it, and it set me off on this little path, because I'm sure when I made that video he said that the Rife machine was going in the 1800s. When I looked, it said the 1920s, and it led me to this video. So what I want to do is I'm going to subbed, and I'm going to like that video, and I hope they don't mind. I'm sure they've put this out to put information out. I think the video's an hour long, and let's just see how much I copied. Oh dear, it's a fair bit of it. However, in making this video, beforehand I was just happy that there was something else, but you know, when I did this video years ago, it seemed that they didn't really want that information available, not really. And you know, all you have to do is use this machine, treat people. If you know farmer, yes, the machines are quite expensive, but if you bought these machines and people are just having frequencies and you're not cutting them open, because I did a video the other day to say all you really need is an ultrasound to tell you what's happened to you or happening to you. But what do they have to do? They have to cut you open and do things. They just can't wait to well, yes, you know what I mean. Give you scars and stuff. And you probably try and, well, anyway, I'm not going to say too much because I have quite a big mouth, don't I? But you know, to me, I was sort of looking things up and thinking, well, I already know that this machine is very good, and you tune it into the right frequency and it cures everything. But I thought the information said that it was out in the 1800s, but hey. So obviously it's a very good machine, and it's not used at all. It's pushed away, and I think that's all the pictures. I just took a couple of pictures. Then I found the channel. So what we're going to do is we're going to play his video, and I hope he doesn't mind. I'm sure he wanted the information out, and all we're doing is telling more people, and it's a very good video, I think, and there's a lot of sort of talk in there that maybe we haven't heard, and when you think that we're in a struggle, it sounds like it's always been a struggle, that there was people trying to do things and change things and bring things out, but as you know, they change history and all these people aren't talked about. That's what happens. And really, everything you needed to make you okay has already been here, and there they are on the television all the time going, we're going to cure cancer, we're going to make it this, and well, anyway, let's just watch this video. I really enjoyed this video. I really hope the channel doesn't mind. It might even be copyrighted because there's music all over it, but thank you very much. I still think this information should go out, and thank you very much, Cookie, because this explains why a Rife machine is so good.
If you want to find out the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Everything in creation spins and vibrates. Everything has its own prime resonant frequency. And this is why once we can identify the resonance frequency of a bacterium or an atom, we can then manipulate that object with its prime resonance frequency. Sound is the source of all creation. Sound and resonance is responsible for everything. By now, you should know that sound manifests in physical form. Every frequency has its own specific shape, a prime resonance frequency. The secrets of the universe are based on energy, frequency, and vibration. The somatic patterns we can form using the same vibrations must mimic a universal process and continuously unfold throughout the universe. The law of vibration states that anything that exists in our universe, whether seen or unseen, broken down into and analyzed in its purest and most basic form, consists of pure energy or light, which resonates and exists as a vibratory frequency or pattern. Science has found that energy vibrates in different frequencies when breaking down all matter. In addition to everything vibrating, all matter that seems solid, liquid, or gas is empty space. The electrons, protons, and neutrons in the atom are in constant motion. Although modern scientists are opening new research doors on energy, frequency, and vibration, words carry energy, and the intention behind the words conveys the vibration. Every molecule or atom in this universe vibrates at a particular frequency. A molecule in free space can vibrate because the atoms which make up the molecule can move in different directions relative to the position of the whole molecule. Atoms and molecules have energy even at 0 Kelvin. This energy causes them to vibrate. Once you know the resonance frequency, you can amplify its waves to such a higher level that it will break or destroy the object. The power of vibration can be analyzed through cymatics with just a vibrating plate, forming patterns relative to the plates, geometry, and the frequency of the vibrations by changing the vibrations. These patterns change from unregulated chaos into symmetry. The universe is formed by light in the form of photon variations, with the absorption and emission of photon energy. Even without adding sound vibrations, the vibrations are always present in the form of photon oscillations, with the future unfolding with each new photon-electron coupling. It's because the universe is never at absolute zero. The Rife machine produced low energy. These waves are also called radio frequency, electromagnetic fields waves. They have low energy compared to X-rays or radiotherapy, which have high power today. Using low energy waves as a treatment is less common.
So my name's Matthew Rife, and I grew up close to here. We're in Richlands, Virginia. I grew up in Whitewood, Virginia. Half an hour away, beautiful mountains, lots of freedom, very few people. So I was raised in this area, just like a lot of my family, and upbringing was kind of country. I mean, it's just a lot of country, and I always had like an interest in electronics and computers. Like I like to know how things work, and I don't know how other people picture things, but whenever I see something, it flashes in my head all the mechanics of it and like an exploded view, kind of like how Iron Man had Jarvis and it explode the view. So I want to know how everything works. So it's just something in my life. So I was always taught by my grandfather and my dad about electronics, about mechanics, how electricity works, doing things on your own. And you know, like my grandfather used to tell me growing up, I'd be like, hey, I got a question. He'd say, well, figure it out. And I always thought he was just being a jerk. And then I didn't realize, you know, he's teaching me how to think critically, how to work things out. And so whenever I grew up and I was older, like maybe around 15, he'd come to me and he'd say, You have any questions? I'd say, I'll figure it out, just to kind of get back at him. And just knowing good well I could do it, and I didn't realize it till later on in life. That's what he did. So like I said, I never did know Roy. I knew him through his journals. All this stuff was handed to my grandfather. Royal Raymond Rife helped raise my grandfather. It was my grandfather's uncle. And, I read his notes and everything whenever I was a kid. I got taught stuff off of blueprints, different schematics.
But the work is encouraging, and it's something that can be carried on with the improvement and the advancement of scientific instruments that we have at the present time that will carry us farther into the field of endeavor.
Yeah, in the 20s, this is a point in time when scientists worked together. They all talked. They would send telegrams and letters to one another. And no matter anywhere in the world, because I know Tesla and Royal both went to France for a while. Royal traveled all around the world and helping one another out.
Modern medicine was born out of an intricate scheme by some of the most wealthy and powerful men in history. They transformed healthcare from an era of natural remedies, traditional knowledge, and holistic wellness to one of synthetic drugs, centralized licensing, and corporate influence that has decimated the health of generations. John D. Rockefeller, being one of the richest men of all time, found that mere financial gain was just not enough for him. In an effort to satisfy his insatiable lust for power, his most trusted advisor came to him with a plan to control one of the most fundamental aspects of society healthcare. This manifested with the Rockefeller Institute of Medical Research, America's first biomedical university. It served as a vessel for him to exert his influence on the future of healthcare directly through medical education. Andrew Carnegie, another industry mogul of Rockefeller's time, also wished to exert his influence and distribute his wealth in a manner that suited his agenda, thereby establishing the Carnegie Foundation. In 1907, the Carnegie Foundation surveyed medical schools with a man named Abraham Flexner, whose brother led the Rockefeller Institute. This survey, known as the Flexner Report, to the Rockefeller Foundation in 1910, favored German-trained allopathic medicine, shunned natural and holistic wellness, and supported the idea that there were simply too many people practicing medicine. This led to rigorous and costly medical education requirements that restricted access to medical careers to the wealthy. Few Flexner recommendations maintained 8 years of higher education and drastically reduced the number of medical schools from 650 to 50. By the end of World War I, decreasing the number of graduates by 2/3, this report effectively extinguished many medical schools that did not teach the allopathic medical fundamentals of drugs and surgery. Now, if you wanted to practice medicine, you had to play by their rules, go to their schools, get their medical license, and practice the way they taught you. If you didn't, laws would soon be put into place to keep your mouth shut. The medical industrial machine became so hell-bent on crushing traditional styles of medicine. In Rockefeller's time, medicine became a science like chemistry or physics rather than an art form that the traditional methods embraced. This meant that it would be more easily controlled through large academic institutions and focused more on interventions for populations rather than individuals. Hospitals were transformed from charitable shelters to a monopolized industry. The proliferation of hospitals in the U.S. from a mere 178 in 1873 to a staggering 4,359 by 1909 marked a seismic shift. The expansion of hospitals was underpinned by significant investments from the same magnates. Their financial support was crucial in establishing hospitals as elite centers of medical care. but it also tied these institutions to the interests of their benefactors. The Rockefellers and the Carnegies did most of the heavy lifting, while the Rothschild family pulled their strings in the background, ensuring they aligned with the broader objectives of the ruling class.
So, whenever you make medications out of petroleum, you can target one thing, but it'll cause side effects, and then you can target those side effects and cause other side effects. And it's just allopathic medical system. That's how it was born. Figured out they can make medications to approach one thing and cause other issues that they can make medications for. And so they went to all the colleges. They said, stop teaching naturopath, holistic, herbs, all these natural ways. Teach our way instead. So here you go. And, there's a history of the Rockefellers having, their hands all over the educational institutions of America. And this is just one of them that they had. They had the colleges. This is Royal's findings on frequency, resonant frequency, and us being carbon-based electrical beings. So why wouldn't we use electricity as medicine? They just said, why can't we use electricity as medicine? And Royal jumped in on frequencies and resonant frequency. And he was the electrical engineer. Tesla was the mechanical engineer. So Royal spearheaded all of this. Later, Tesla built something called the multi-wave oscillator. You may have seen it. 2 large coils, and they work off of electromagnetic fields, a lot higher voltage than what Royal used. 2 different machines working on the same theory that are applied differently. And that's kind of what I'm doing because I've had to update it to today's time. Royal spearheaded all of this, left an indelible mark on the fields of microscopy, frequency healing, and scientific innovation during the early to mid 20th century. Well, Rife's lab was one of the most advanced labs in the world at that time. He was equipped to design, build, and operate virtually any type of scientific instrument that he needed. He was able to perform experiments that few other people could do because they lacked the facilities.
It was more perfect than he is. I never have. And you know who recognized it? One of the greatest men in this country.
In 1913, Henry Timken was president of one of the most prosperous industries in America, the Timken Roller Bearing Company. His factory in Canton, Ohio, produced the tens of millions of ball bearings that kept the wheels of the mechanized industrial age turning. I developed a device for Timken factory that saved millions of dollars a year in production costs. A scanning machine for establishing the quality of the steel used in manufacturing the ball bearings. This X-ray scanner detected flaws in the steel supply before it was sent to the production line, and in doing so, significantly increase the efficiency and output of the factory. Timken was so impressed that he rewarded me with his full sponsorship rights, took up residence on the Timken estate in San Diego, and there, in a room above the garage, I was lavishly supplied with whatever equipment or money I needed to outfit an entire laboratory. I constructed a series of 5 microscopes, all of which were referred to as virus microscopes because of their ability to view these minute organisms in a live state.
So frequency, figuring it out, there wasn't like the technology we have today. So he built something that's called the universal microscope, and it's called the prismatic microscope. The patent, all the layout schematics, they're all still online today. You can look this up, you can build one for yourself. But he was the first person to see a live virus because this was the strongest microscope of its day. 6,000 times zoom. Yeah, my microscope in here, I have 100x. He had 6,000x, it's amazing. Different viruses, and whatever color reflect it back off of the virus, that's its resonant frequency. So just like this jacket, it looks green, but it's not, it's reflecting green. And that's what our eyes pick up on. So its resonant frequency, well, I guess of the color, would be its actual color. So that's how he figured out the resonant frequency of things, is by what color it would reflect.
So when you get light in the same range or a corresponding range, it will cause those microorganisms to fluoresce. That's something that people hadn't really done before or since. I used monochromatic light to investigate microorganisms and determine species specificity, a specific species of a microorganism. One of the other working principles about it was that the way that it channels the light never allows the beams of light to cross over themselves and create diffusion of the light. So you continue to have your resolution no matter how far you take the light path. You're not losing resolution. Well, the key features of the Rife virus microscope is that they had superior magnification with corresponding resolution. And also, another important factor was the contrast that with my special illumination system, I was able to produce contrast in the organisms without chemical stains. And even when identifying the organisms, because of the way they're illuminating and the contrast that's produced with the so-called monochromatic light, I could identify which virus I was looking at by the color that it refracted. So that had never been done, and probably still hasn't been done today. And so these key features of the microscope, which were far superior to what was available at the time, allowed me to discover things that other people were unable to because they simply lacked the equipment. You cannot sustain those particles with your acid mantle, and they stand out simply, as I've stated 1,000 times. The particles are smaller than the molecular portions or the granular structure of your acid management system. Naturally, they can only be stained with a frequency of light. Does frequency hide the harmony of the universe? And was it deliberately taken away from us? One of the most existential questions of our time. In the early 1900s, governments around the world issued a decree ordering everyone to tune to 440 hertz. There is said to be something sinister about the frequency of 440 hertz. That the Rockefeller Foundation had an interest in ensuring that the United States adopted the 440 hertz standard as part of the war on consciousness, leading to the control of the musical cult. This theory says that tuning all the music in the world to 440 hertz turns it into a weapon of war. There are many serious studies confirming the destructive influence of the 440 hertz frequency on humanity.
So whenever you have the electrical EMFs that are going through, these are causing positively charged ions in your body. When you're born, you have a bunch of negative ions. This is the reason kids, they heal faster, they have more energy, they wake up easier, and they just go hardcore all throughout the day. Over time, as you grow older, you start to lose the negative ionization and start collecting positive ionization. Well, these electrical EMFs that are coming off electrical cords and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and everything else around us, even cell phone signal, these are positively charged ions that your body's picking up. So grounding, if you look at grounding, it's effective because it's an electron exchange. You have positively charged ions and the earth is a negative ground, and it's sucking these positively charged ions out of your body and it's replacing it with a negative ion. So your inflammation goes down. You sleep better, you have more energy. So instead of doing that, that's essentially what my machines are doing. I work on EMFs and I do electrical synapse through the body through electromagnetic fields. And it's kind of like with music, whenever you have something in sync and within tune, it works a lot better because it's resonant. And that's how these electrical synapse works. But it's also giving your body negatively charged ions and pushing the positively charged out. Things work within frequency and rhythm. So our hearts have a certain rhythm to them. Now, if you multiply that rhythm, you can divide 432 by that rhythm. So that means every heartbeat, whenever you're playing 432 hertz, one of those pulsations lands on the heartbeat. The pulsation of our naturally tuned body. 440 is outside of that rhythm. It would offset it a little bit. So they've done clinical trials. I remember one of them, they took 6 people who were scared of the dentist, out of tune of your body. It's going to upset your breathing. Same thing happens with heart rate and rhythm and electrical synapse within your body. Rife was a master tool maker, and he knew a tremendous amount about optics, and he was also visionary in his approach. He thought outside the box, he drew outside the lines, and that's why he created something that no one has duplicated since then. I mean, when you talk with people who are supposedly the experts on microscopes, they say, oh, that's impossible. He was leading the industry into unseen places.
That's a relatively simple device to make.
Yeah.
Or even back there, it was a relatively simple device to make. Stability, though, that's another matter.
And which was why no patent protection was possible, because even if you could invent a new frequency generator,
yes,
those already in use could do the same thing. So they had to keep the thing secret. And the only secret they had, naturally, was which were the frequencies that were useful.
As far back as 1920, I conceived the idea and the possibility of when the causative agent of malignancy, so-called cancer, would be discovered and found and proven that it would be caused by a microorganism. Of course, reception that I received that far back from the medical profession and scientists was nil, but I kept at the work and I succeeded in eventually isolating a virus. First, I began sectioning tissues of every known type of malignancy. I sectioned over 20,000 of those, cut them down with a special microtome to very thin. Some of them were only a micron in thickness. I studied those under the microscope, and I eventually built my first high-powered microscope for the purpose of analyzing and checking those sections. The only result that I obtained over all those years was I succeeded in developing a very excellent technique of tissue preparation, but I never found an organism that I could say was the causative agent of malignancy. I went through with this, and then I developed other instruments of greater amplitude of magnification than the old original number 1, which was very lacking in resolution beyond about 8,000 or 9,000 times. It was a lens microscope, and all of the air was excluded from the body and replaced with glycerin. The lenses were homogeneous with glycerin all the way through the whole thing, and the result was that in allowing the rays to separate and not cross in the interference band of reflection, such as they do in the ordinary standard tube of the regular research microscope, we held them apart, we separated them, and then brought them back together and picked them up again at a needle point. But as I say, the resolution of this instrument beyond about anywhere from 9 to 10,000 times dropped off decidedly rapidly. We could go up on some occasions, on some preparations, up to 17,000 times, but we didn't consider the resolution anything out of the ordinary beyond about 8 or 9 or 10,000 times, depending entirely upon the specimen we were examining. With the results that those tissues gained us absolutely nothing. And as I say, I built other microscopes beyond this one. Arthur Kendall and I, working jointly in the Pasadena General Hospital, succeeded in isolating what we classify the first filterable form of bacteria ever seen. Now these filterable forms are very minute in size. The smallest of all is the one from the BX, which we isolated from cancer. But that is the smallest, and it's less than the 1/20th of a micron in dimension and highly motile. We succeeded in isolating this organism, this BX, using a Kendall media.
Yeah, so he would match the frequency of that virus, and it would oscillate these different, actually what he looked at, what he went into, he figured out the resonant frequency of the virus, but then he had to go into the disease of the body, which are carcinoma cells.
We have what we call a coordinating resonance. We have a chemical here, we have a frequency. All right, we will take and change those to two tuning forks and pitch to the C absolute. We put the other one down there, we strike this one, the other one resonates. It's coordinating resonance, owing to the chemical constituents, and we create that electronically, the same as we determine what material is under that microscope by the color and the index of light as we rotate it between the analyzer and polarizer. As the color index fades from one color to the other, the angle of refraction of that crystal and so on, we can tell. It's coordinating resonance. The same as I say, you take two tuning forks and pitch to the C or an A absolute, you strike one, the other one resonate. So we're showing an electronic frequency through the tissues of the body that simply revitalizes the bacteria with no harm to normal tissue.
So he figured out the frequency of carcinoma cells. And whenever he matched that frequency, it would make the cells oscillate and just shake. And whenever you're doing this, the proteins cannot align inside the cell. Therefore, it's dead. It either dies off or it splits off and it becomes something called a daughter cell, which is essentially dead. And then your lymphatic system just processes it out as waste. So he would eliminate cancer that way by killing the cancerous cells and not letting them double and split and multiply. The American Medical Association, they sponsored him and the Rockefellers. And Royal put up this clinical trial on cancer and tuberculosis cancer patients. We don't know how many cancer patients there were. We know there was at least 9, because in his notes he talks about that there were more cancer patients than tuberculosis patients. Well, the story, I guess the folklore would be 16 cancer patients, and I've heard either 14 or 16 all walk out cured. It's not what it was. There were 2 of them that didn't get cured of cancer by his machine. They took longer to process. Well, we know 8 of them, so we know that there's 9 at least, but we know there's 10 at least also, because 8 of the patients the FDA signed off that were cured by Royal's frequency generator. The other 2, it took, I think it was 2 to 4 weeks longer, and then 2 months longer on treatment. And this is after the FDA came there. And then his notes say that they were cured. But so at least 8 of them out of minimum 10 walked out cured.
This is a Berkfeld filter, porcelain filter, similar to Dresden China, unglazed. The liquid material is poured into the test tube, and a drop is removed from that liquid, which Rife will shortly place on a slide which has been sterilized with flame. The liquid material is withdrawn from a micro pipette made by Rife into the solution, and a drop is placed on the slide and covered with a cover slip made of quartz. Rife used quartz slides because the light passed through better than glass. Now the ray tube is above Rife's head, which will be turned on later to kill the virus. The instrument is to the left of Rife, the black instrument, which is a ray tube instrument. It consists of being a transmitter and an audio oscillator in which Rife could tune the frequencies which he knew would kill the virus, just like a voice would crack a glass. Now these are the first pictures ever made of the cancer virus. These cancer materials were motile, streamlined shapes like a fish, which Rife said would travel at speeds of 400 miles per hour if the comparable distance were measured in ordinary air. This is an air bubble coming in from the right-hand side of the slide because the slide was not sealed. Our Rife will now turn on the ray tube instrument, which will activate the light. It'll have a little flash, and that'll be all it is to kill all the virus in the room. And just on for a few seconds. This ray tube instrument had a capacity of 500 watts. Which would transmit this energy 10 to 12 miles in around the whole area. And this shows the virus after it's been treated with the ray tube instruments, which has a resonant frequency that killed the virus, and they're all clumped together, agglutinating in the field. This shows the ray colors, not the colors, but the ray emanations. You'll see the colors pretty soon. The lethal frequencies of the electromagnetic emanations are shown here in these first slides ever made of oscilloscope patterns, which were shown in the Detroit Electronic Convention in 1942. These spikes of these frequencies are primarily the killers of the virus, which actually the internal energy is built up in the virus and they just disintegrate into pieces. So there's no life left to grow again. The various frequencies that can be generated by an audio oscillator are put on a carrier wave in the diathermy range, which ranged from 13 million cycles per second up to 42 million cycles per second. And this shows the amplification of the signal going into the carrier wave, and the slower frequencies now are being shown, which they can be varied with harmonics and other square wave waveforms that were later found to be much more effective than sine wave or triangular wave or other waveforms that have been tried for years. This is an Abrams oscillator, a deadbeat oscillator that generated the frequencies which you see here for the spikes coming up to kill the cancer virus or any other virus. Worms were also devitalized up to 10 feet long with a few seconds treatment. Rife researched all of the bacteria, including Streptococcus, Staphylococcus, Streptothrix, leprosy, tuberculosis, gonorrhea, Streptothrix, and many other diseases. This is a bacteria called typhoid, Bacillus typhosus, in which the bacteria has three viruses, one at the bottom, which you see, one at the side, and one at the top. When the polarity is negative in the body, the virus remain in the bacteria, but when when it gets too negative, they're compressed and they're extruded from the bacteria. When it's positive, well, they remain in the bacteria and there's no disease. The feelers are shown on the lower right-hand portion of this picture. That's done with a stain that Rife developed to show the feelers. This was a dinner meeting at Dr. Milbank Johnson, MD's home in Pasadena, honoring Rife and Dr. Arthur I. Kendall of Northwestern University Medical School. And this is the 40 doctors that attended that dinner. And they had Dr. Rufus von Klein-Smith, president of USC, was there. And his university was used to sponsor the clinic in 1934, which cured 16 hopeless cancer cases. This instrument was designed for controlling bacteria in oil and gasoline, in which the U.S. government had about $300 million in storage tanks in several places around the world, which had to be replaced every 3 months. This instrument could kill the bacteria in the fuel so that the replacement would not be necessary. President Nixon reviewed this system and decided for the oil companies that there would never be anything like this ever allowed to be used, so that the citizens of this United States could keep on paying $300 million every quarter.
The lines are blurrier today than they were even at that time regarding microorganism developments. Because of new equipment, there's more that's seen than before. But what's happening is that all this emerging information is creating a revolution in the field. And now people are dealing with things that they didn't even know existed even 10 years ago. Mycoplasmas, nanobacteria, bacteria that are smaller than viruses. Right? People don't even know how to classify what they're looking at. It is such a chaotic soup. And there isn't a lot of money that goes into research around it. It's a highly undefined field. We're having to actually, there's been a language that's had to be invented even to talk about some of these things, to even name them.
Here's one thing you'll find, and you'll find it in years and years of experience, John, that it's an absolute true statement that I've found out over all the years When they don't know themselves, then it ain't, as the voice says.
2020 happened. A lot of people were like, oh, 2020 was so bad. I love 2020. There's a lot of great things that come about. And the biggest thing to me was the allopathic medical system. It opened people's eyes to the allopathic medical system. And now they know who not to trust. Yeah, I mean, I can name the evil stuff too. So I am very hesitant to say what people's actual motivation is without knowing 100% factually. The love of money is the root of all evil. So whenever you can make money and then off of that money make more money, then more money, then more money, especially when you're doing bad to other people and you know it's wrong, that's pure evil. That is pure evil to do that to somebody, to hurt somebody and take their happiness away and lessen humanity just for your own personal gain. 100% evil. And that is why Royal was persecuted. After his lab was burnt, I mean, people call him a crazy person, yet he made the numbers 1 through 5 microscopes, still used to this day. He had the patent for the bulb that goes up underneath the sample on a microscope, up underneath the tray. He's the one who made it. Yet he's a crazy person and doesn't know anything, because after his lab burnt down, he left the country. He went to Mexico. That's where he started his journey at. And John Crane still stayed here in the USA. And he worked with a different frequency generator that he made. Well, they ended up putting him on court trial. You know, crimes against whatever. And they were trying him to get him put in prison because they didn't want him to exist, nor none of his research. Royal had the foresight to leave the country. And they wanted to ask Royal some questions about John Crane and using his frequency machine. And he said, no, I'm not coming back to the US. They sent a reporter to Mexico. And they had him record it on all of his statements about John Crane's doing and his activity. And then Royal went all the way down, even through the Philippines. He went to Germany. He went to United Kingdom, continuing his research and building Rife machines. And he stayed on the go because he knew what was coming, because he was going against the FDA and the American Medical Association. The synthetic stuff really hurts us. I mean, even the fibers. Polyester, I'm wearing it right here. You know, it's never been alive. You know, these walls, gypsum, and then we got tile and concrete under that on the floor, never been alive. Windows, glass, metal, never been alive. I have a cabin in Kentucky. When I go to the cabin, I sleep the best I ever have. There's no doldrum of winds. You know, there's always active air, even with all the door shuts. You can feel life all around you. And just like when you go into the woods, there's trees everywhere, but yet there's always a breeze. You know, there's life. So we know that things that used to be alive still hold energy, like a cabin. Wood, dead wood. Okay, it still holds energy. You can prove this by burning it, because you can capture 40% of that burnt energy and turn it into electricity. That's the most you can capture out of burning wood, 40% of the energy. So what, can you burn glass and get energy out of it? You can't. You can't burn metal. You can't burn concrete. There's no life there. So if we're natural, why aren't we living around more natural things? We're going into clinical trials. There's some great people down in Clearwater, Florida that do clinical trials. They're laying everything out. So I'll just work within theory. We've seen a lot of great things through myocarditis necrosis of the heart being reversed. We've seen inflammation just throughout the entire body, you know, being reversed. Arthritis, which is inflammation of the joints, it going away. And, you know, right now I think a big one would be myocarditis, because mRNA shots, you know, genetic manipulation. But there is a full list of frequencies that have been built over the years. I have yet to be able to produce frequencies for certain things. I'm only at the beginning stages of this journey, but there's been multiple doctors over the years to keep on adding to this list and boiling things down and helping to make like a central list. Now I know a 4 list right now. One of them's a consolidated and annotated frequency list. This is fully downloadable online. There's quite a few others that's just collected over the years. And I have them all collected together, all consolidated, and this is what's going to be on my app. I'm making a social media app. Everybody that buys a Rife machine will have a login, and then, you know, they're saying, oh, 425 worked for this, you know, for gout or whatever the case may be. And then if other people jump in on it, I'm able to data mine this over time and help boil us down to more specific frequencies, because you have to be within half a hertz to be able to be effective. And you have to run square wave. A lot of people run sinusoidal, but you can't. It has to be square wave. And I'm hoping to be able to boil this down and pinpoint it more accurately and come up with the systematic process to where if something new comes about, we can nail it down within days. So, like I said, I'm at the beginning stages and I look forward to the journey ahead, but it's gonna be a lot of work and I love it. So it's not even really, it's a labor of love.